we're going to shift our attention to what is incontestably the most important overall escape in the sport of Jiu-Jitsu. This is variations of what is often referred to as an elbow escape. The basic idea is that we're going to use the structure of our body between the hands, elbows, knees, and hips to engage in shrimping motions underneath our opponent's body weight and put him back in some variation of guard. That's always the core idea behind any elbow escape, no matter what name you give it or what variation you use. There's no question whatsoever that in international competition, this is the most successful form of escape at all levels, all weight categories, by a landslide. Nothing else is even close. If I could only have one escape for the rest of my life from all the major pin positions of Jiu-Jitsu, I would undoubtedly choose variations of the elbow escape. It is the single easiest way for smaller, weaker people to escape from punishing pins and put their opponent back in a position where they can win the fight, namely the guard position. It is the best friend of anyone who is tired, smaller, or weaker than their opponent. We're going to look at it in the case of the mounted position. There are many variations of elbow escape. I'm going to start off with the most basic, and then we're going to start to bring in more and more resistance on the part of our opponent, so that ultimately our intention is to be able to perform this move on very good opponents. Presumably, if they're good enough to take you down, pass your guard, and get mounted on you, they're better than you are. So we have to be able to do this realistically on someone who may have a better overall skill set than we do. Let's start off with the essential elements behind any kind of mounted elbow escape. Okay, we're bottom mount position, and our opponent is on top of us, just like so. Now, first things first, ultimately, I have to capture my training partner's legs. As long as my opponent is sitting bolt upright, all of his weight is going down through the center of gravity into his hips and knees. And as a result, his knees feel very heavy to me right now. That's a bad thing. What I want to do is put the majority of his body weight onto his hands and elbows. I don't want to carry his weight here. I want him to carry his own weight. And the way we do that is by blocking my training partner at the hip, putting a knee in the center of his back, and bringing his body weight forward so that he carries most of his weight in his own hands rather than me carrying all of his weight. Because most of his weight is now going through his hands, his knees and feet start to feel a little lighter. And as a result, we've got a better chance of hooking into those legs and escaping. Now, I'm going to show you the foundational method of getting a hold of your opponent's legs. I'm going to show you first an artificial situation where my opponent is making a bit of a mistake and his feet are out wider than they should be. Okay? In a more advanced setting, which we'll be looking at later, my opponent will probably have his feet together. He may even have his feet crossed. Okay? But for starters, let's start somewhere with the feet further apart. I'm going to start off by placing my forearm across my training partner's belt. I'm going to take my second hand and I'm going to lock a frame, if you just sit up for 1 second, that looks like this. So I have a forearm frame that goes across the belt and I reinforce it. This places my elbow just inside his knee. So this is our foundational frame. From here, with his feet out wide, we are going to turn and shift our lower body into this stance here, where I have one leg like so and one leg straight. This is going to make it easy for me to press with my elbow and bring my knee inside his ankle. The whole key is for me to gain inside position with my knee inside his ankle. If my knee comes along the back of his calf muscle, I will never successfully elbow escape. So many times I see people furiously trying to elbow escape here. It's forlorn and hopeless. Always my intention is to position my knee inside his ankle, here. Only then can I dig underneath his shin and get what I want, elevation of his foot. Okay? Again, I cannot bring my knee over the back of his calf muscle and expect to escape. You will not escape in this fashion. In fact, you won't even get close. What I need to do is to gain inside position with my left knee. I cannot do that with both of my feet like this. Both of my legs bent. I can only bring my knee to the back of his hamstrings and calf muscle. Worthless. So what I need to do is start an action of turning my knee down towards the floor with my left leg straight, so that as my knee comes up, it catches inside my training partner's ankle and locks. If I didn't have my elbow here, Mateus's leg could come forward at the knee and I would never get underneath his ankle. It's only when I push down with the elbow and come up with the knee that I create the elevated foot that I want. Once I create the elevated foot, I reach across with my second leg and I lock a triangle around my training partner's ankle. Now I switch my hips. Watch Mateus's right knee. When I switch my hips from facing from the east to the west, the knee comes off the mat. I put my elbow underneath it and I brush the leg back between my legs. Now from here, I put a frame across his shoulder so that if he went to cross face me, it would be difficult. If I didn't put my frame there, he could cross face me and now start to reclaim his position. So I put the cross face frame in. From here, I plant my foot and I shrimp onto my side, making sure that I catch his leg tightly between my legs. If my legs are relaxed, he could kick his leg free and start to pass my guard. So I make sure there's some tension here. Now I put my elbow in front of the other knee. My knee goes in front of the pocket of his hip. Now from here, I align my body with Mateus. Then I go beyond alignment and shift my hips out. And from here, it's the easiest thing for me to lock up a closed guard. And then from here, we start going into our various forms of offense. Let's have a look at this from other angles. From a situation where Mateus is on top of me, first, I cannot have his weight going down through his knees. If his knees are that heavy, it's going to be very hard to move them. So our first thing is to form our frame, put our knee directly on his center line, and bring his body weight forward. Now from here, I form that frame that we talked about earlier. I see Mateus's feet are vulnerable. They're further apart than they really ought to be. So I configure my legs. I pressure down with my knee on his elbow and I bring my knee inside and underneath his ankle. As a result, I'm able to lock a triangle on my training partner's ankle. I turn my hips from one side to the other. And as a result, I can easily stuff his leg between my legs. I put a frame hand here on his shoulder so that I can easily shift my hips out. And from here, I put my elbow inside Mateus's knee. I bring my knee onto his hip. My first action is to align my body with his so that my head goes onto his center line. Now, so often I see this frustrating problem. Just bring your knee slightly further forward, Mateus. I see people get this far in the elbow escape, and then when it's time to close their guard and put their foot around, they're stuck inside their opponent's hip, and they can never close their guard. Don't worry. From here, we simply shrimp out one more time. My foot comes out effortlessly, and we lock up a closed guard, and from here, we're ready to start our offense from bottom. Let's have a look at this from a range of different angles. In a situation where we're lined up with the camera, first things first, we put his hands on the floor, then we lock our frame right there in front of our training partner's belt. I notice that his feet are wider apart than they ought to be. We start the action by turning our hip and knee down to the floor. I put my elbow directly in front of his knee and I go underneath his shin bone. I reach across, catch, and lock the triangle. I shift my hips so that his knee comes off the mat, and as a result, it's very easy to put it back between my legs. I capture my training partner here at the shoulder. I shift my hips out to the side. My knee goes right there in front of his hip. And as a result, I can easily square up to him. Then from here, I go beyond squaring up by shrimping out offline. And as a result, I effortlessly take my feet out and we end up back in guard position. As soon as we've got to guard, we go back into the grips, which will make counter offense possible.